What's that? What is this? Oh, that's what it is. Oh, man, it is the Evening Emperor. That was a little too dark. It's the Evening Emperor edition of PaleocratDiaries, Wednesday, June 29th. You better be pumped up. Come on now. We've been out for a minute, but you won't even believe the kind of crazy stuff I've been up to. I'd make you proud. You better believe it. I try to do it every day, not gonna lie. In fact, I have a celebratory cigar. It is the Leather Rose over at Deadwood Tobacco. Super pumped up about that. Bought one of those for Jacob Fowler. Do you love that guy, by the way? I do. Working with him, man, is awesome. Awesome, amazing dude. Got to hang out with him. So I got to hang out with the Fowlers and the Flanders. And it was super amazing. And there were all these crazy revelations that took place. All of these things realizing, oh my gosh, I got a big thing going on. I've got big plans, and you're part of it. And so how do we start? The same way we do every single day. We rejoice because it is yet another day that the Lord has made. He's good. He's great. And he's in total control. So what do? We take a knee for Christ the King, resolving deep inside every single thought, every single word, every single deed to him. Come on! Ow! We gotta be pumped. So you gotta dream bigger thoughts. You have to resolve to say, never give up, son. Never give up, no matter how hard it is. And I'll tell you what, it's tough. It is tough. Life is tough. It's a crazy thing. Would you expect any less from a great God like ours? Would you really? Honest to goodness? It's gonna be hard. You're gonna have to rely more and more and more on grace. And how do we do that? It's a simple thing. It's a mantra here. Never give up. Keep on smiling. And remember that we too, one day, we're gonna die. We are going to die. It's gonna be unreal. And you don't know when it's gonna happen. You gotta give it all you got. And that's what I'm doing, right here. Did you miss me? Did you miss me? I missed you. I'm not gonna lie. I could feel all the butterfly kisses, though. I could feel it all day. People were like, where'd Paleocrat go? You're all freaking out. And I'm like, I am building an empire for realsies. For realsies. And it's one of these things you start realizing just the nature of it. You don't plan on it. But you start realizing, oh my gosh, look at this. It's a huge thing. There's like all these people. There's a community of people, prayer chain, book club, women's chat, men's chat, even a fat shame to fitness club. If you're a fat slob, you should be part of it. By the way, I did this on purpose. Look at this. Look at that. It is going away. Do you see that? I'm wearing a pair of pants that I haven't worn in years. I'm talking like 3 years, 3.5 years, wearing that pair of pants. Super excited. All that stuff. And starting to really sense the meaning of the mission, right? And say, we're talking here, one of the main things, enthusiasm, heresies, sects, cults, you name it, that sort of a thing. But at the same time, it's bigger than that, especially with the stuff of the wolf pack. And on top of that, we are, Tim Flanders said it best. He looked it up 2 days ago. Hops online, and he's like, Catholic Presuppositionalism. I have to say, it was awesome to know that he'd figured out how to say that. Because he'd struggled for a minute. But he figured it out. And he said, I'm going to look it up online. So what did he do? He went online, looked up Catholic Presuppositionalism. And one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other was ya boy. It was your boy. And I thought, man, we have to really make this thing an institution. We must do that. It must transcend the show. It has to transcend me and my personality because it's not even mine. I'm banking on stuff from a long time ago. I'm talking about St. Irenaeus. I'm talking about St. Francis de Sales. I'm talking about St. Bonaventure. I'm talking about other folks. So I don't want it tethered to a specific show that's going to come and that's going to go. As sad as it is. As sad as it is, one day the Kaiser's going to die. But yet the idea of that needs to keep on going. And I said, I know that I may not even be the best suited to do it. I'm humble enough to admit that. Okay. I know that there are people who they didn't go to school for journalism and mass comm or minor in political science. They went to school for something more uniquely suited and fitted for apologetics of this nature. And I said, my role is the icebreaker. I was telling somebody that earlier. The role is the icebreaker, right? That's that crazy boat that crashes through these crazy shelves of ice. It's got to be tough. It's got to be willing to take bumps and bruises. It has to be willing to not necessarily look the coolest, but it's tough. and it drives through, it forces its way through, and the supply ships come in from behind. I'm connecting with supply ships. I'm connecting with supply ships. And we're going to be rocking it out. So you're going to want to definitely go. You need to go right now, okay? I implore you. If you like the show, and I know you do. If you like the show, go right now. I don't even care right now. Keep this tab open, obviously. Open up a new tab. Don't be a lazy bum. Open up a new tab and go and subscribe over at Paleocrat. YouTube.com/Paleocrat. You're going to see a lot more. And we're going to be doing stuff even at the .com, especially at the .com, even over at the Patreon, because lazy bums. You should be over at Telegram, but you're not. And so we're going to deal with that. All right, before we move on, we got to crank this out. I could go on forever talking with you. We got to get, of course, to the comments and all that jazz. So in the meantime, real quick, we're going to talk about the SAINTMAKER. If you've already learned about it, you got to do it. I just got the summer edition of the SAINTMAKER sent to me, a nice red one. We're back to, it's a loop, right? So I'm back to the very first SAINTMAKER I ever owned, very first color. It's been almost a year. In less than a month, it marks 1 year since the advent of Diaries on Meaning of Catholic, and even less than that over at Reason and Theology. We've come a long way. And the SAINTMAKER has been with us, in fact, quite a while. I had a little hiccup for a second. But if you haven't gotten onto that train yet, you've got to do it, and you're going to find out now more reasons why. So if you've already seen it, make sure, grab that coffee, grab some booze. Grab some booze, light up a cigar. Okay, do whatever you got to do. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about nihilism, the root of the revolution of the modern age, talking about scientism, and we'll do that in about 90 seconds. Can a personal planner really make you a saint? Not by itself. But in our day and age of addictive apps and glowing screens, we're bombarded by constant distraction, and our quest for sainthood often takes a backseat. The SAINTMAKER is the first high-performance planner for the spiritual life, made by faithful Catholics for faithful Catholics. It's a work of genius, really, fusing the wisdom of the saints with the science of personal productivity. It's rigorous, but sainthood is tough, and most of us need help organizing our time, our work, our leisure, and our devotion, because that can help you become a saint. The SAINTMAKER is elegant, fits in your purse or briefcase, and is a perfect companion for your missal, Bible, or rosary. Published 4 times per year, each season includes daily planning pages, feast days, and devotions for both forms of the liturgical calendar, goal-setting pages, confession journals, and more. It's why the SAINTMAKER is used by hardworking Catholics, like CEO of Sock Religious Scott Williams, best-selling author Sam Guzman, YouTubers like Amber Schneider, a Catholic wife Dina Barca, and Brian Holdsworth, and priests like Father Corey Stitcha. Try the SAINTMAKER out, and if you decide that it's not for you, you can send it back for a full refund within 90 days. So go right now. Find your life planner at thesaintmaker.com. Quantities are limited though, so head on over to thesaintmaker.com to order yours and to start your SAINTMAKER journey today. Do it right now, thesaintmaker.com/PaleocratDiaries, promo code in the description below. Yeah, okay. What in the heck? What in the heck is going on here? I got the sound playing? No, it's not playing. Oh, Casimir Black. That's why. What was that? That's my fault, I ain't gonna lie. I can't throw that on my kids anyway. My kids are up at Sleeping Bear Dunes. They're pumped up, enjoying the summer. They do this kind of thing all the time, but that leaves me to my own devices. And truth be told, I am a professional. There's no doubt about it. At the same time, I rely heavily on my kids. I mean, they're experts. That's why we bought them. We invested heavily in the Fisher-Price computer set. Fisher-Price Tonka truck stuff. Yeah. Speaking of this, you better be getting ready. That's the sound of the PaleocratDiary alert system. And the reason why is because we're going to be entering the octagon. The octagon of history, talking about nihilism, the root of the revolution of the modern age. That, of course, is by Eugene, Father Seraphim Rose. And we live in that, don't we? All around us, wicked bad junk. We've got wicked bad sins, scandal, heresy, apostasy, all around. And it seems, as our Pope said today in a letter, in fact, it seems as if the world has found itself at a place where it doesn't even know how to deal with symbols. It's because of what Ronald Knox talked about. Ronald Knox anticipated the day the Catholic presuppositions were under attack and would disappear. The people would begin, it would be a transition to a crazy, crazy, wicked time where we would be focused on the will, where it would no longer be about reason. It would no longer be about logic. It would no longer be about morality and valor. Nothing about chivalry, nothing about goodness and beauty. But these things would be hyper-simplified. And then we saw that. We saw that at the beginning of the 20th century because we have experienced firsthand the dialectic that takes place within nihilism. And we're on phase 2. So get out that xylophone right now. I got a buddy doing it, straight up. Get out that conch, get out that shofar. Get out all those crazy instruments that you've got, because you've got to let the world know you're not ashamed anymore. Otherwise, we're toast. We need you right now. We need all your gifts and talents right now. What did God make you for? No longer hiding it. Don't let your classmates down. Don't let your coworkers down, your friends and your family. Don't let them down. Stand up, and stand up strong by taking a knee. You got to do it, and you ain't alone. Why? Because you got me. It's true. Oh, it's so true. Rocking out. I love that, by the way. I love all of you guys. I absolutely do. Let me see here. Let me get properties up so I can show this live chat. Here we go. What's this thing? What's that thing? Here we go. Okay. Window. There we are. Look at that. Look at these crazy people. Oh, hold up. Got to take it off. Got to move on. I wish I got to make those sunglasses. I got to have them things, turn them into just my regular glasses. I'd wear those all the time. All the time, I tell you. So, okay, let's see here. Yeah, Phil Gonzalez, good to see you, bro. Same thing with Catholic Convert in Love. Yes, Kaiser Standard Time, you better believe it. You better believe it. It's just totally true. Kaiser Standard Time, 24/7. Let's see here. Whales, drums, and coffee. Whales! Stop with the whales. No, don't. Don't stop. You got to remind me. Look at this. Oh, Anton, he's Steel Gang Rise Up. Oh, dude. Oh, hold on. Where's... Ah! Hold on. Check this out. Look at this. Got to put this down for a second. Check this out. I got this. You'll be happy. I'll take this off for a second. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, let's see this here. Let's see. Window capture. Okay. Look at that. Seal Gang Rise Up. Come on, son. Straight up representing. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? I still don't know what the heck it means. I still don't know what it means, but there's some good people up in there, some good folks. So I'm really excited about that. All right, really excited talking about these people right here real quick. Okay. So, yes, ready to rumble for sure. Rachel Wilson, definitely ready. Yes. Hi, Paleocrat on Rumble? No, not yet. I know I should be. It's just more work, man. It's more work. I would rather you and everybody else get their keister over to Telegram. Trust me. It's much better. Trying to compete with Robertson Jenis, I see. What? What are you talking about? Robertson Jenis, that dude doesn't like my stuff. I don't understand that. A friend of mine, Lawrence Gonzaga, he's an awesome dude. He's worked with Sungenis for many years, right? Pack Islander for life. If you go on YouTube and look up some of Sungenis' oldest stuff, Pack Islander is the main dude. That guy is a buddy of mine. He ends up sending something to Sungenis about my work. Sent a great sample, I might say. They're all really good, but some are, gooder. Some are even better. And he sent one of the better ones. And it went there, and he's like, oh, no, it's too zoom for me. Like, he's kind of, he's from a generation, man. I'll listen to his stuff. I used to, when I was on Facebook, I'd check it out. But it kind of also says, look I think the main place he's doing is on Facebook, isn't it? I don't know. It kind of says something a little easy bit. Says something a little bit. Matthew James says, wait, what time is Kaiser time? It's my first live stream. Matthew James, Kaiser time is everywhere where the Kaiser happens to be. It's what time it is. Yeah, people are like, what's Kaiser time? You're like, right here. Wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, straight up Kaiser time. It's the way it works. All right, let's see. Dream bigger thoughts. Michael Shelby. Yes, very good to see you. Dangerous no time. So many insufferable Catholic speakers out there trying to fit into the professional Catholic box. Not my man, J-Bone. We love you. Dude, I appreciate that, by the way. Isn't it different? Isn't it different? Someone said, why do you do the things you do? I said, because I like being me. And being me includes the creativity, man. It includes the creativity. It includes letting loose, having fun, right? It's funny, man. Terry Fowler, Jake's wife, met me for the first time. And she told him, she goes, he's different than he is on his show. She's like, he's not so, intense and loud. And I'm thinking, it kind of let me down a little bit. Not the loud part, but the intense part. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Had to ramp it back up a little bit. Let's see. Taking presuppositionalism back from John Calvin and J. Dyer, one Catholic at a time. I'll tell you, isn't it good? Isn't it good? And you know what? We're going to build this infrastructure big time. It's going to be, it has to, because we're in a day and age where we are really cracking through sheets of freezing cold ice. Freezing, very thick, very strong, powerful, almost impenetrable ice. It takes a certain kind of force to be reckoned with to crack through that. And I got to say, you're watching it. You're watching it in action. I think it bothers him too, to be quite frank. Yeah, let's see. Rachel says, I meant to write Jeremiah the Beardless Wonder. Yes, I had to do it. Yeah, Fire Marshal. Okay. Let's see. Dang, brother Jeremiah, you got them shades on. Yes, I do. And Sarmad says dope shades. Very, very true. Totally true. All right. So we're going through, we're going through this book, right? We're in chapter 2 right now. And in chapter 2, it actually breaks it down into 4 different phases. Okay, we talked about liberalism last time, the dialectic of nihilism. We talked about liberalism. This time, we're talking about realism. And realism in this regard, he says, the realism of which we speak is, in its simplest form, the doctrine that was popularized precisely under the name of nihilism in a book entitled Fathers and Sons. The figure of Bazarov in that novel is the type of the new man of the 60s in Russia, simple-minded materialists and determinists who seriously thought to find the salvation of mankind in the dissection of a frog, or thought that they had proved the non-existence of the human soul by failing to find it in the course of an autopsy. And it reminded me, even before he has it in parentheticals, that it reminds him of the Soviet nihilists, the new men of the 60s, who failed to find God in outer space. Have you heard it before? Have you? Hold on, let me get that out. There we go. I gotta say, my favorite cigar. I only had 2 of them. I only have this one. I don't really smoke cigars too often anymore. I used to do it at the beginning of every show. But have you dealt with that? Have you dealt with people who are like, well, I don't see God. I don't, you say this about him. I'm looking all over the place. I'm not seeing him. Kind of like a George Bush moment, right? Where he mockingly, in a very offensive way, was looking around. Was it the Oval Office? He's looking around. Well, don't see no weapons of mass destruction here. That kind of thing. It's basically at the same level. It's like an intellectual Bushism for atheist people. He's a believer in a word, right? In the nothing but, in the reduction of everything men have considered higher, the things of the mind and the spirit, to the lower or basic matter, sensation, the physical. Okay? So people who say, well, I only believe in what I experience. What I experience with my senses. I get it down to the real simplest form. The simplest way is really the real way. I say they take Occam's razor to an extreme, to a ridiculous extreme is what they do. And they say, I only believe in things that are matter, right? Physical, sensation. That's basic stuff. That's the real thing. That's the brute fact. I just believe in facts. I just believe in stuff that you can sense, taste and touch and smell. All that jazz. You know what I'm talking about. And I know you do. You've probably dealt with it a lot. In fact, we're living in the heyday of that nonsense. And I like that he emphasizes that it's kind of the run-of-the-mill person, right? I mean, you have that at the highest levels of academia too, but that the common man in secular age, and we did a series on secular age, if you'd like to understand what this is, how we got here, what it means, and how to best address it and move forward, not just to survive, but to thrive. Of course, you can see that link in the description below to the full catalog of your boys' shows. As opposed to liberal vagueness, the realist worldview seems perfectly clear and straightforward. In place of agnosticism or in evasive deism, there's an open atheism. in place of vague higher values, you have this kind of naked materialism and self-interest. All is clarity in the realist universe, except what is most important and most requires clarity, its beginning and end. And this is one of those things, one of the subtle reasons, right, why this book really does stand out in its evaluation of this, is to say, look, you have the connection and yet the distinction between liberalism and between realism, right? As we've defined it in each one of these chapters, as he defines it, and we would agree with that particular definition thus far. And to say that you can see the similarities in them, but one of them doesn't even pretend. There's no pretending going on about higher values, these elusive things, this watchmaker idea, right? The clockmaker that wound it up and let it go, that sort of a thing. It's not flying with this, right? For them, they're like, well, I'm just in a world. I don't know how I got here. We came out of nothing, or we've always been here. I don't really care. The question why is meaningless. That sort of a thing. And that it really comes down to, what do you want to do? What is in your interest? Okay? So it's one thing. It's like, and look, I don't even want to throw Ayn Rand too far. I mean, in a way, yeah, with this. But the virtue of selfishness. There's some logic to the idea that there is a sense of self-interest that is in fact virtuous. We say, look, I have an interest in preserving my life. If a rock's coming down at me, I'm going to book out of the way. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, I'm just going to stand here. I don't have any interest in myself. That's why I feed myself. It's why I prefer certain foods, right? I have a certain self-interest as well. I also pursue, but it's not purely that, right? It's that and other things. For the person who's a realist, it's only the most abstract other things, like saying the citizens of the world. The citizens, the global village. It's always this super hardcore abstract thing where there's this real LARPy, phony notion that they are demonstrating as much care for those near them as they would, let's say, in Africa or India, or down in the rainforest in South America. That's just not true. And they're definitely not doing that, right? They're definitely not doing that. They definitely, even though their claim is that we're all just one big family, one big village, and that's it, they don't really have anything that connects and binds them other than the most basic, fundamental, animalistic thing. That's it. All is clarity to the realist universe, except, of course, the beginning and the end. Their presuppositions and their endgame, because there's a harmony in that. There's a harmony between those things. We've talked about it before. There's a harmony between your most ruling and foundational assumptions, the framework and foundation wherein and whereupon and wherefrom anything that you do makes any sense, right? That gives meaning to that, intelligibility to that, purpose and design to that, right? That gives it its place and its meaning, its potential in your life. And to say between that and the means, the way that you live, the way that you think, the way that you speak, the way that you act, all of those things, there's a cohesion, even in apologetics. When you defend your position, your means, the means and method that flow from your ultimate assumptions is harmonious. It flows with that. It recognizes through and through, from beginning to end, that ultimate assumption. And of course, the conclusion that flows from that is the same as your presupposition. There's a harmony there. Where the liberal is vague about ultimate things, the realist is childishly naive. They simply do not exist for him. Nothing exists but is what is most obvious. It's the naive, undisciplined thought of the unreflective, practical man who, in our age of oversimplification, thinks to impose his simple-minded standards and ideas upon the entire world. Or, on a slightly different level, the equally naive thought of the scientist, bound to the obvious by the requirements of his specialty, when he illegitimately attempts to extend scientific criteria beyond their proper bounds. Here we are again with the everyday person, right? The common Joe. The common Joe, we call him Johnny Q and Sally Sue, and one of the reasons why I emphasize that is because we live in a day and age where it's terribly unreflective and overly simplistic. It lacks nuance and complexity. We live in a world with God. There's things that are definitely simple. There's no question about it. But to say that that is the fullness of all things, give me a break. That's phony. It's a weird religion, actually. It's the most curious faith. It is. It's the most curious faith. There's complexity all around. So for people to to believe that they can boil it down to the simplest things, we see it in politics too, don't we? In fact, it was part of the charm, if I could say so, part of the charm of Donald Trump. But yet Donald Trump's ideas a lot of times were in fact not very simplistic. His way of describing them to people may have been, but talking about the reformation of NATO, stuff like that, like, changing up policies regarding foreign powers that we want to have diplomacy with, that is not simple. That's actually quite complex. But the way to communicate that, it was charmingly simple. As long as it's recognized that it's not, that is not all it is. Well, it's really easy. Let's go over there and just start trading with somebody. I mean, come on. You hear that a lot of times around the dinner table, don't you? You got Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe's sitting over there. Yeah, I'll tell you. You want to figure out what the real problem in the world is? And he's always got some idea about what it is. And it's always something just like a magic bullet. It's a magic bullet. Okay? I've got people that I know. I'm nervous to say who. I think you might know that every single time a question comes up, it doesn't matter what the topic is. It all boils down to a specific people group that might be in the Old Testament. It's true. It's true. And it doesn't matter what it is. I read an article by a certain individual like that was excellent. It was way too long. We were super long-winded, real bad, worse than me. And I'm like, wow, this is even making my eyes spin. And I'm reading it, and it was talking about the problems with the trad movement, the problems that are facing with the Latin Mass, the ambiguity with the popes and all this other stuff. And he was saying, look, these folks, they're always wanting to blame Vatican II. They're always wanting to blame, the Novus Ordo. They're always wanting to blame this stuff. And he says, that's just a magic bullet. You're trying to blame it all on one thing. That doesn't make any sense. And then the second half of his article was that he had the real answer. And it was the same thing. It was just redirecting the focus. Just one thing. That's what it all is about. Really? All of it? Wow, son. That's crazy. What a hypodermic needle theory you've got going there. Typically, hypodermic needle theories are garbage. It's true. But that same thing affects people who are into science. I dealt with this all the time. This all the time when I was an atheist for 7 years. I knew some people who were otherwise awesome, kind, courteous people who, in fact, knew a great number of things. It's a fact. They were there for me during times where there weren't really many other people there for me. It was especially when my daughter was dying. It was a big deal. At the same time, I was a leader in groups. I'd be, working with different people. I was a moderator and a host of different groups that would come together and we'd talk and everything else. And I can't even tell you how common it is that everything gets boiled down to this thing where science is where all the answers must come from. Not just some, all. And this idea of philosophy, it's having a tough time. Not going to lie. In the atheist movement as a whole, it's basically at this point some lip service to a lot of philosophy. And anyone involved in philosophy can sense it. That even there, and he'll mention this in a moment, that even there, science has had to intrude. You can no longer have the humanities the way the humanities have been. It now has to be to have undergird all of that with science. The truth is, in the highest sense, knowledge of the beginning and end of things, of the dimension of the absolute. And if nihilism is the doctrine that there is no such truth, then it is clear that those who take scientific knowledge for the only truth and deny what lies above are nihilists in the exact sense of the term. And that's to ask, is it true, is it right, in fact, to call such a philosophy about scientism nihilism? Well, yeah. Yeah, if you're denying the ultimate beginning and ultimate end, and instead, those who take scientific knowledge for the only truth and deny what lies above it, then, of course, nihilists are in the exact same sense of the term that we're using. Worship of the fact is by no means the love of truth. It is, if we have already suggested, a parody. It's the presumption of the fragment to replace the whole. It's the proud attempt to build a Tower of Babel, a collection of facts, to reach to the heights of truth and wisdom from below. But truth is only attained by bowing down and accepting what is received from above. True, it has to be analogous to it at bare minimum, but the idea that you can separate that you do not need, that you do not need the coherent knowledge of God, his pre-interpretation of things, to know things in and of themselves as they truly are, how they began, how they operate, what is their purpose, all of these different things, to take that out, you're now at a place where you're just narrative constructing. That's it. And it's all based on what? Individual claim. It's always left to this dramatic uncertainty. That is the cause of that. I get flack. People give me flack and they say, you're always emphasizing the limitedness of man. And I say, because we live in a day and age where that's denied, where the limitedness at all is denied. And in fact, that the limitedness is infused in such a way with a certain hope and a certain faith in what it can accomplish that you no longer need those things that are truly necessary. So you have to reorient that conversation. You have to show them that that's insufficient. That if you take God out of the equation and assume that hypothesis is unnecessary, you are going to fall to pieces. It doesn't mean that those pieces are of no value. It means that you've been building something that may have varying degrees of value on sinking sand. It's a big difference. For such men, there's no truth. And of them we may say what St. Basil said, St. Basil the Great said, a pagan Greek scientist, quote, their terrible condemnation will be the greater for all this worldly wisdom, since, seeing so clearly into vain sciences, they've willfully shut their eyes to the knowledge of the truth. I want to emphasize something in that. They have willfully shut their eyes to the knowledge of the truth. Willfully shut them. Why? What's that all about? That's kind of weird. People say, oh, that's, what are you talking about, Jeremiah? How dare you? You're talking a lot like St. Paul. You're talking a lot like St. Basil. That's what you're talking about. You sound like them. How dare you? Talking about the willingness of unbelievers to keep themselves from the knowledge of the truth. And why? For the reason St. Bonaventure says, because of the will. It's not a defect in the fact. It's not a defect in the truth. It's in the person. And it's not so much in their mind, and emphasize not so much, as it is in the will. Which is why whether it's the book of wisdom, whether it's the book of Romans, the idea is that it boils down not so much to what they can see around them, because we live, move, and have our being within this. And it's constantly testifying about the divinity, the power, and the attributes of God. It's about the will. Not wishing to give glory and honor and thanksgiving where it's due. And we'll do an entire episode about the reasons why and the logic behind self-deception from a Christian perspective. Up to this point, however, we have failed properly to distinguish the second stage of nihilism from its first. Most liberals, too, accept science as exclusive truth. Wherein does the realist differ from them? The difference is not so much one of doctrine. Realism is, in a sense, merely disillusioned and systematized liberalism. As one of emphasis and motivation, the liberal is indifferent to absolute truth, an attitude resulting from excessive attachment to this world. With the realist, on the other hand, indifference to truth becomes hostility, and mere attachment to the word becomes fanatical devotion to it. I think this is one of those things that we can see in the advent of secular age. That it didn't just happen overnight. It's not like one day we weren't secular age, the next thing, bada boom, bada bing, there we are. That it all happened like flipping on a switch or something. And that instead you can see that all of these different schools, all these phases are operative at the exact same time to varying degrees in different people and in different cultures, right? Different individuals and peoples. So you have this all together. At the same time, you can see microcosm, macrocosm, this one, right? Again, looking at atheism, after Zeitgeist, after the Four Horsemen, atheism went through this crazy thing. Ask any person who's still a principled agnostic and emphasizes their agnosticism and they've got a beef with atheism, and ask them what made that change. What is it in the modern circumstance that we're in that made them re-emphasize the agnostic dynamic of even classical atheism? And why is it that they're not nearly as angry? Why is it that they're not nearly as militant in their activism? Atheism is notorious for it. It's notorious for its activism. It's notorious for these things because it's a complete detachment. It's not just saying that we can't know, because functionally they're the same. Okay, functionally, an agnostic is going to have no reference point to the divine in dictating their lives. Okay, so society, individually, doesn't matter. Family, school, employment, all of that is secular. All of that is atheistic. No connection whatsoever in their espoused view to theism. The atheist, on the other hand, is the same, right? Same idea. They have no reference point to that. It's purely, exclusively humanistic. On the other hand, the atheist is going to say something that's different. We know there is no God. We only believe in one God less than you. Right? So they're gonna say that sort of thing. They're going to emphasize the graveyards of the gods. They're going to emphasize not just that we can't know and be open to the debate on what's possible or not possible. No, they think it's over. There's a guy I knew named Bob Goodrich. Bob Goodrich is a super wealthy dude, hardcore Democrat guy, right? And hardcore atheist guy. He used to own the station that I worked for, the radio station, okay? And he was militant. This guy was a radical. He was utopian. He wanted to start a third party for ladies that he was the leader of. The symbol was like a mountain lion or something. You know what I mean? This dude is like, yeah, he ran for office, and his main mission was just getting the women to vote for him. And the optics in his videos, he's pointing these girls up on a bench, and they're looking up at him like this, and he's pointing down at them, talking to them. Rah, 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 rah. Listen to my ideas, ladies. And they're like, okay. You know, it's like optics. This guy was aloof. But he was also militant. He was sick and tired of the conversation that we needed to be okay with the theist at the table. We needed to no longer be okay with the priest or the bishop who's at the table. Sounds a lot like Richard Dawkins. The kind of guy that's like, what is that guy doing here? Well, Richard, he's a bishop. Richard's like, it doesn't matter. Right? He wants that guy out. That is what we're talking about here, that you get to a point where even psychologically you're just done with it. And now it's not something to coexist. You want it gone. It's the reason why it was so significant. The question that was asked by Douglas Wilson in the movie Collision. And in fact, I may stream that. We may stream it tomorrow. Okay, so if you're not at the Wolfpack, make sure to go to the Wolfpack. We do live streaming videos and stuff regularly. I've been wanting to do that for a while. But in that movie, Douglas Wilson and Christopher Hitchens, they're going around and they're debating. And there's a lot of fascinating things in there, including the moment that Christopher Hitchens became aware, in fact, schooled in a bar on preterism. He had no clue. He was used to using arguments against dispensational premillennial people, right? But the question came up, something along the lines of, do you look forward to the day and age where there'd be no Christian? If there was one more Christian in the world, what would you hope? Did he deconvert? You'll learn more about what he said tomorrow. But the people watching, right? They're the zeitgeist generation. They may have actually They're the mythicist zeitgeist generation. They may have abandoned mythicism. They may have never entirely embraced it, but it's part of that milieu within atheism, within the world as a whole, the cosmos generation that says, look, religion bad. Look at all the scary religious people and all the terrible things that they did to the sciences. We need to get rid of that. We only need to trust the science. It's the only way we can know anything at all. Blah. Garbage. But it's a mood. It's become a hostility. Anti-theism. Anti-theism became a thing. It wasn't just you're an atheist, you're an anti-theist. And there's a fanatical devotion to it. The atheist community or the atheist movement, okay, that sort of a thing, it's an activist community. Whether it's schools, whether it's Hollywood or mass media, whether it's social media, right, with your Twitter and Facebook and everything else, whether it's politics in particular. So politics, education, Hollywood, lawfare, all of that sort of direct activism, that sort of thing, that is consuming. In part because once you get to this place, there is not even the possibility of what's on the other side. You're exclusively humanistic. The best you've got is that you are going to return to dust. And you're supposed to be quite proud of that. Makes you a star. Because you are one already. You're stardust. And that's all it is. And you go back to stardust. What a beautiful fairy tale. You went back. And now you're stardust for, feeding feeding all of the creatures of the earth. But in that world, it becomes self-interest is it. That's all. Self-interest in it, whether you want to say self-interest in humanity or self-interest in your group or whatever. But the idea is it doesn't transcend. You can be in something bigger than yourself, but it's not transcendent. There's no otherworldly dynamic to that. So insofar as they conclude that and believe that that's true, everybody else is just someone believing in fairy tales. You've probably heard that before. The realist himself would say that this is the cause, right? Or this cause is the love of truth itself, which forbids belief in higher truth or fairy tales. That's no more than fantasy. Nietzsche said it this way, in fact, while believing this, saw in it a Christian quality that had turned against Christianity. Quote, the sense of truth, highly developed through Christianity, ultimately revolts against the falsehood of fictitiousness of all Christian interpretations of the world and its history. It's all on the table. It rebels against it. You can feel that. Anybody watching, if you were ever an atheist and you walked away from the faith, did you go through a feeling that maybe even your political views, everything was just infected by this fantastical fairy tale logic of Christianity, and that maybe Marx was right all along? Did you? Did you ever wonder if maybe I was wrong about all that socialism, communism stuff? Maybe that's the real way forward. I did for like half a second. I did. I remember I was like, maybe that's what it's about. Maybe the gender stuff, I don't know. Maybe that's just me being some patriarchal Christian and it's a hangover. And you start acting almost like a Baptist in some ways, in the early Anabaptists who were critical of the hangovers that many of the Protestants maintained from Catholicism after they revolted. Both Christian and realist are possessed of a love of truth, a will not to be deceived, a passion for getting to the root of things and finding their ultimate cause. Both reject as unsatisfying any arguments that do not refer to some absolute that itself needs no justification. Both are the passionate enemies of the frivolity of a liberalism that refuses to take ultimate things seriously and will not see human life as the solemn undertaking that it is. It's precisely this love of truth that will frustrate the attempt of liberals to preserve ideas and institutions in which they do not fully believe. and which have no foundation in absolute truth. And so it's an interesting thing, in fact, paradoxical, right? That a group that believes that there is no purpose, that there's no meaning, that everything is ultimately for naught, that everything is vanity, vanity is sweet, sweet, bitter vanity, that those people would also be hardcore about the truth, that they would oppose being deceived, that they would have an ultimate meaning, that they would say, this is the ultimate. This is the ultimate. But that's because the ultimate has a wild effect. If you don't care about the ultimate and you like to shut your eyes, play monkey no see, monkey no do, me no hear you, me no hear you, me no see you, you want to do that liberal take with ultimate authorities, you want to do that, right? Absolute, universal, that sort of a thing, you're going to find that the people who do reach that level where they say, I believe that this is the ultimate, that this is the ultimate foundation, and this is the ultimate end, that those individuals are going to be on fire. Those individuals are going to move forward in a way that is much stronger in their position because they're not doing some kind of airwalk. That's ultimately what's happening with liberalism. It's an airwalk, right? Which is pretty dope if you're watching somebody, dunk a basketball. Kenny Walker's the real deal. But at the same time, now when you're talking about epistemology, now when you're talking about metaphysics, no way, Jose. It doesn't work. Give me a second. There we go. Yeah. And so you've got this thing where for them, for the nihilist, they sit there and they at least have a commitment to the ultimate. But what is the truth? To the person for whom this is a vital burning question, the compromise of liberalism and humanism becomes impossible. Impossible. Which will drive you to transhumanism, for example. Right? So it's like it's piggybacking. They don't want to drop it all the way. But you start to hear this idea that we're just parasites. Maybe the world would be better off without us. Maybe it's not just not for us, but maybe we're the biggest scumbags that have ever been around. Maybe we're the real problem. Maybe it'd be better if we just went away. Of course, they're not really talking about themselves. They're talking about you. They're talking about you. But it's not enough to ask this question. One must find the answer, or the last state of the seeker will be worse than the first. The Christian has found the only answer in God and his Son. The realist, out of contact with Christian life and the truth that animates it, asks the question in a spiritual vacuum and is content to accept the first answer he finds. Mistaking Christianity for another form of idealism, he rejects it and becomes a fanatical devotee of the only reality that is obvious to the spiritually blind, and that, of course, is this world. Let's see here. Oh, in the comments. I didn't even notice, man. In the comments, we got some folks. In the comments, we got somebody here. What's that? Praise be to the flying man. Dude, 2008 wants their joke back. It wants its joke back, dude. Are you a zeitgeist guy? Is that what you are? Yeah, I'm anti-theist. Thank God. That's like the anti-theist theist. What? Dude, that's so stupid sounding. Seriously, do better, man. Yeah, do better. You got to be better than that. Everyone's agnostic. Here, this guy, by the way, just so everybody knows, this dude right here, he got a magic crystal ball out of a Cracker Jacks box. This dude, he knows everybody. Everybody's agnostic. But I bet if you ask him deep down inside, he'd have to say something along the lines of, well, you can really only know what you experience. Have you experienced everybody? Have you? Have you experienced personally what every kid experiences? Have you experienced that? Or are you just like one of those little blue dot guys that's in a little corner, right, of a city somewhere in a country or a state that's within this little blue dot, within a really big galaxy, within an even huger universe that you don't know jack about? But dude, you know everybody's agnostic. That's just the truth. We don't know. This guy's Magic Man. Again, okay, Sister Cleo. And yes, we can show you that we have knowledge of God. In fact, this entire series is talking about that. That if you have systems analysis, and I ask you about your system, you ask me about mine, I can actually account for the distinction between the one and the many, which is essential to any kind of knowledge or meaningful communication. That I would be able to account meaningfully for the intelligibility of experience. The idea that we can salvage induction. The idea that we have a uniformity of nature, or that we have abstract entities like, or abstract concepts like logic, natural law, laws of the universe, and that I can speak of them beyond the narrative structure that I've created from particulars, and then committing the logical fallacy of extending that beyond what it's warranted, saying, oh, it's a neat little construct you've got. It's a neat little construct. It seems to explain a handful of things in your little world, right? That's about it. And you're a latecomer to the game. But to extrapolate that into the entire universe, as if it's true of the whole, come on, man. Cut it out. Yeah. Yeah, so in the comments there, yeah, in the comments, yeah, why are atheists the number one issue for you? Shouldn't you be more worried about Islam, etc.? You know, I'll put this on the comments. We'll take a break for a second. I got plenty of time. I don't have much left. It's actually a shorter chapter. Okay. And so, yeah. So why talk about atheism? Because we live in a secular age. Again, I did a very long series on secular age, talking about what it means, how we got here, the various kinds of secularism, and the way that it's affected the way that people could even imagine the possibility that we have no reason for the hypothesis, no need for the quote-unquote hypothesis of God. There's a reason why. In the long run, though, your kind are going away. And the reason why your kind are going away is because you guys abort yourself out of existence. You abort yourself out, contracept yourself out. You guys LGBTQIA plus everything else under the sun yourself out. You guys also get yourself out by stupid things like, oh, there's a big problem with white privilege. So if you're white, you shouldn't be having babies. You know, or the kind of way that contraceptive culture has made it so that people aren't getting married, much less raising kids. Much less raising kids. Is why people like you in your universe have to get to the place where you're talking about downloading your brain into a robot. It's also why the hyper-emphasis on politics, lawfare, stuff like that. Cut it out. Cut it out. Plus, it's the chapter. It's the chapter of the book. I go through, just so you know, right? I mean, maybe you saw this in that magic crystal ball of yours. Maybe, I don't know. Seems pretty fancy. You know a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff that's garbage, poo-poo, trash. But you apparently know it. So maybe you should have known it's a chapter review. Yeah. Let's see. What else is in there? There. Back from introducing a very smart and cool individual to the Paleocrat. Yeah. Yeah. You guys definitely got me here with this cat. What a weirdo. What a weirdo. And it's terribly unimpressive. Literally at this point, it's kind of like the nagging, a person. It's like a Christmas Story, right? It's like the little goon, not so much the bully, although it a little bit like that too. It actually doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. And next thing you know, they're bleeding out the nose. And the little crony, the little toady that's with them, they're like, ah! They don't know how to deal with it. Boo-hoo, wah-wah. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you personally agree. And by the way, this is the last thing I'll say about this, because I don't want to get wrapped up talking to, a guy playing with a magic crystal ball. But he says, just because I'm an atheist doesn't mean I agree with everything the left thinks and does. You agree on the most basic and ruling presuppositions with them. There's 4 phases to the nihilistic dialectic, dude. You should try harder. You should maybe sit back and study more. You should really do that. But the point is that just because you may not agree with that, it's irrelevant. You don't understand basic notions regarding superstructures. Good luck. You should read some Haidt. You should read some Haidt on superorganisms. Read some David Sloan Wilson and E.O. Wilson on superorganisms and how that works. You're like, but I'm a free rider. I'm changing the game. You're not changing jack. And in fact, it's no even studies done on groups, small groups, so it's even bigger than just one person, but groups, these small ones. By and large, it's much easier for the superorganism to end up engulfing them, even for their own self-preservation. Study superorganisms. Do better next time. And maybe he's cranking out a bunch of kids. Maybe. But by and large, there's a reason why. There's a reason why in secularism there's a hyper-focus on politics, the control of education, the control of media, lawfare. There's a reason why. And that's because most of them, go look at pictures from Reason Rally. Go do it. Look at the numbers, sociologists that talk about the reason why the nihilistic folks are scrambling for the levers of power and why they howl like little demons when they lose. Because they're going away. It's a cult of deconstruction. Nihilism, man. Again, try better. And you should become Catholic because it is the Catholic worldview and it alone that can actually give intelligibility to the very things that I mentioned earlier, including, most fundamentally to so many things, the one and the many. It's quite a problem. It goes back a long way. People have tried to figure it out to say, how are we able to salvage the fact that we have both one and many, similarity and diversity? That we have things that can compare and contrast? How are we able to know something beyond the narrative structures that we create that would give us any kind of degree of certainty, rather than simply saying that your little bubble of cohesion, your coherentist view, is no better off in the grand scheme than whatever the bad is thinking, based on their inputs that allow them to know about where things are in the world and what those objects are and why to avoid them or to go to eat them. Yeah. Metaphysics, epistemology, ontology, morality, all of those things only make sense within the Catholic worldview. They make sense to various degrees outside of it, but only insofar as it is reflective of it. That's why. And because Jesus died for your sins. And if you don't, then you're just wallowing in your own sins, wanting to be an idolater, turning away from the God you know deep down inside is there. You're a creature created in the image of God, and he died for you. He died for you that you would not be a slave to the sins that you're enslaved to right now. And if you don't like that I spoke of you in that way, you're talking about everybody in the universe being agnostic. Now, both Christian and realist are possessed of a love of truth. Okay? So that's what this is about. He's a victim rather of a love of truth that has gone astray. It's become a disease. It ended in its own negation because it lacks the hypothesis. The hypothesis that it says it has no need of is the cornerstone. The motives of the realist are, in fact, not pure. He claims to know what, by his own theory of knowledge, cannot be known. We've seen that the denial of absolute truth is itself an absolute. And if he does so, it's because he has an ulterior motive, because he places some otherworldly value above the truth. A great example of this, in fact, would be idolatry. And to say, read Romans 1 again. Go back and look. Go back and read the first chapters of the Book of Wisdom. Go back and look. What you'll find is a great overview of the way that people act, human action in human history. And you say, if you do not give glory and honor and thanksgiving to God who created you, then you're ultimately going to worship the self and the created order. You're going to erect all sorts of idols, all sorts of things that are supposed to give you meaning, but each and every one of them falls short because it's either the creation of your own hand or the creation of God. But either way, you're serving a created thing. It's an idol. It becomes, in fact, a perfect parody of the Christian love of truth. When the Christian asks the ultimate meaning of everything and is not content until he sees that it's founded on God and his will, the realist, likewise, questions everything, but only to be able to abolish all suggestion of or aspiration to anything higher, and to reduce and simplify these things into the terms of the most obvious and basic explanations. Where the Christian sees God in everything, the realist sees only race, sex, or the mode of production. I think it's fascinating, by the way, that he said that. What year was this? What year was this written? What year was this written? 1994. 1994, man. Talking like 30 years ago. Talking 30 years ago. Dude's writing this. We live in the heyday of this. You can see the development of that over time and how that plays itself out within the decline of civilizations, within various models that talk about the rise and fall of these things. You can see that we're there now. The nihilist history of our century has not been something imposed from without or above, or at least has not been predominantly this. It has rather presupposed and drawn its nourishment from a nihilist soil that has long been preparing in the hearts of the people. It's precisely from the nihilism, the commonplace, from the everyday nihilism revealed in the life and thought and aspirations of the people, that all the terrible events of our century have sprung. This is a big claim. A lot of people would like to simply lump it in with the hierarchs. They play a role, no doubt, right? The elitists in the New World Ordites, right? Them folks definitely play a role. I think any study of secular age and the development of exclusive humanism over time, those things that made exclusive humanism possible, the elites play a definite role in it. And yet at the same time, this really does come down to the people. And I think a good comparison would be this. I was in the mall, and as you can see, I've been losing mad weight, right? I've been losing crazy weight. And when I do that, when I'm losing it, I'm looking around at all the other people. I'm looking around and becoming more cognizant, more aware of the way that the world is right now. And especially in Grand Rapids, right? So I walk over, I'm in the mall with my son, and I'm walking around, and everywhere I look are people who are just rabidly obese, morbidly obese, and oblivious to it, or seemingly that they're celebrating their fatness with belly shirts and cutoff shorts. That sort of a thing. And I'm looking at it, and everything inside of me is recoiling in horror. I thought, this right here, it's all around us. It's a nightmare. It's wicked bad. And we're not even talking about the mom jeans, right? We're not even talking about the ridiculous sweatpants with the tapered bottoms and stuff. We're not even talking about that with the flannel shirts and the cutoff top. That is a nightmare in and of itself. I'm just talking about the fatness for a moment. And then walking by places like Victoria's Secret, walking by and seeing the mannequins that they have. They have plus size mannequins, a bunch of really very plump and pretty thick chicks, right, in the mannequins. And for the first time, it hit me. Rather than just saying, this is some plot, this is some corporate scheme, they're just trying to force it on us. They're going to go woke and go broke. On that issue, no, they won't. No, they won't. Because they're actually appealing to the audience of people around the country who are morbidly, offensively obese. That's why. And yes, I know the idea about cigars and inhaling cigars. Get off my back. Get off my back, man. And so, but the idea that you have these people, ultimately, the people who are going to be buying things all around the country, look at any chart and look at how bad it's gotten. The gluttony, the inability to be under self-control, the total loss of self-control, the total rejection of temperance. The idea that they are just enslaved by this tractor beam of shoving enormous amounts of food down the old gullet, right? Down the esophagus. I love the taste. And they're watching as they're just getting bigger and bigger. You can hear them getting fatter by the second. And yet what happens? We're blaming some higher-ups for that. No higher-up had a gun to somebody's head. It's the same with this. And in fact, how surprising is it really that the rise in nihilism with the advance of realist kinds of nihilism, that as this increases in society, it is also accompanied by grotesque amounts of obesity and lust. Is it surprising for you? And no, you cannot be an agnostic Christian. People can call themselves that, but that's like calling yourself a theistic anti-theist. It's stupid. There's a dude, what's that dude's name online? He goes by that, isn't it? Theistic anti-theist, something stupid. Theistic atheist, something stupid. The guy's just a wigwam of ridiculousness. I mean, I don't mean to be terribly rude, right? But he really is. He's a hodgepodge, right? A mishmash paddywhack, right? Throw the guy a bone. No thanks. The guy needs to do better. I don't just throw bones to people who are saying, outrageously dumb stuff. Try harder. It's precisely from nihilism to the commonplace, right? We see that even with the worldview of Mr. Mustachio Man. Science, progress, enlightenment, a practical materialism that scorned theology, metaphysics, and any thought of action concerned with any other world than the here and now. Priding on the fact that they had, quote, the gift of reducing all problems to their simplest foundations. That's quoted in Hermann Rauschning, The Voice of Destruction, 1940. Laughed at any institution of marriage, mere legalization, right? As a mere legalization of a sexual impulse that should be free. Welcomed sterilization of the unfit, despised unproductive elements, including, by the way, monks. Saw nothing in the cremation of the dead but a practical question. Did not even hesitate to put the ashes or the skin or the fat of the dead to various kinds of productive use. A distrust of the sacred and venerable institutions, the abhorrence of the institution of monarchy. A simple-minded delight in modern conveniences and machines, and especially in the automobile, and the sense of speed and freedom that it affords. All of these things we can see right now. And yes, we do have real-world knowledge of God. And we don't, in the comments, I'll keep this up in case people are like, what is he talking about? There we go. I'll keep it up. Yes, we do have real-world knowledge of God because we're operating off of presuppositions that aren't your bogus ones. Your bogus presuppositions are really hot trash. So why would we listen to you? Hey, you guys should listen to me. You think you guys can really know God in the real world? Are you serious? How dare you? You're the guy saying everybody's an agnostic, you weirdo. Again, look, magic man with the crystal ball guy. There is very little of this that is not shared to some degree by the multitudes today, especially among the young who feed themselves enlightened and liberated, right? They feel themselves that way. Very little that is not typically modern. I'm liberated from the fairy tales. I'm liberated from that savagery, the barbarism. Yeah, I'm totally modern. I'm into inclusivity. I'm into tolerance and diversity. I'm into modernity. Scientism rocks. Scientism's number one. Well-meaning men think to forestall the appearance of another Mustachio Man by an attack upon irrationality and a defense of reason, science, and common sense. But outside the context of Christian truth, these values, constituting a realism of their own, are a preparation for and not a defense against the advent of another terrible simplifier. So you can try. Liberalism will try and liberalism will fail because it ultimately is operating off of the same ultimate assumptions, the same presuppositional framework, that network of ruling assumptions regarding the world, being, how we know what we know, what's good and bad, authority structures, universals, transcendence. Realism unquestionably belongs to the spirit of the age, and all who feel themselves to be of that spirit have had to accommodate themselves to it. Thus, humanism has itself found it necessary to change with the times and adopt a more realistic tone. We call this atheism plus. Atheism plus. So you have this new thing. You can see it. You can see it shift. People can say, oh, no, it's not true. It's exactly true. That's how it played out sequentially within human history. You can look at this and you can say, wow, look at that. Isn't it kind of weird that some groups are able to look at systems and predict what flows from those systems inevitably, and the other group is living in a world where things are coincidental and accidental? And they're like, oh, no, it doesn't have to be that way. You're like, it doesn't. You could change. You could be different. But you believe a certain thing that leads to a certain thing. That's the way it works. If you believe that you came here for no reason, you have nowhere you're going in the end, all of a sudden, wow, imagine that. Your views of how to live right now become hyper into crazy sorts of consumption. And then religious reactions to it. Religious, environmentalist reactions to that are like, oh yeah, man, we have to like sacralize all this stuff to figure out, man, how do we bring it back? We're consuming everything. Hyper-materialism, consumerism, commercialism. Wow, isn't it a weird coinkydink that all of that rose in tandem with that? That's weird. No, it's not. It's as predictable as the morning sun. It's as predictable as my uncle's morning poop. And that's predictable. Needs a lot of fiber. Thus, humanism in a more leisurely age had a more idealistic and liberal coloration, but it found it necessary to change with the times, right? But even in the most sophisticated and contemporary humanists and the most urbane scholars and statesmen, the realist tone is unmistakable. It's revealed, for example, in the invasion by scientific methods and attitudes of that last stronghold of the humanities. No contemporary scholar in whatever field feels secure unless his work is to the fullest possible degree scientific, which, of course, in this sense, means scientistic. What's interesting, this was written in 94. This was written in 94. And now we live in a day and age that I would say has even moved beyond the strict realist. I've talked about the advent of SJWism and what that means, where you have the same people, the same institutions that at one time were spouting Bill Nye the Science Guy with his methodology is the same one that's now insisting that Bill Nye the Science Guy ends up having the most redonkulous rap that's ever been created in the history of the world, denying science on gender, denying science on sex and chromosomes. It was terrible, by the way. It really is maybe the low mark in all of television history. You tell me I'm wrong. It was bad. And then for them to hide the old episodes, we need to do something about that. Oh, you should try to get some, son. Ooh, with a boy or with a girl, it doesn't matter anymore. Come get some. Ooh, what a joke. What a sick, perverted joke. Giggling their way down a slippery slide to HE double hockey sticks. Humanism, in short, has come to terms with realism. Oh, let me say one more thing. Anthropology. That's another one that's moved beyond that. Feminism's now into ethnographies, right? So you have these ethnographs that say, well, okay, this is just my personal narrative story. This is my personal experiences, the influences involved, and this is my truth, blah, 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 blah. And these two are balancing at the same time. It's not the exact same thing, but they have underlying assumptions that are the same. And so on the one hand, it intrudes like crazy, and it becomes uber scientistic all around. And then on the other hand, you have people who say, oh no, the science is too binary. The science is too sure. There's too much certainty. Humanism, in short, has come to terms with realism, or so it thinks, with reality. In the passage from liberalism to realism, the humanist sees not only a disillusionment, but a process of maturing. The Christian, of course, sees something quite different. In the second stage in this progress of the nihilistic dialectic, heaven has been closed off from the gaze of men. And men have resolved never again to take their eyes off the earth, but to live henceforth in and for this world alone. And I would say it's now expanded beyond that to other places in the universe or other places made of material, these naturalistic wonderlands, or maybe hellscapes. We don't know. We're trying to tap into the multiverse. Whether it's trying to find a Goldilocks zone somewhere, what they're trying to find any kind of life on other planets, thinking about the possibility that maybe we have to get to a place of sustained energy as one planet with the mega New World Order Tower of Babel construct, and only then will the aliens appear. Only then will we be ready for the real revelation. Wackos. Wackadoodle weirdos. And same people wanted to put their brains inside of computers. I'm gonna live forever. There's no heaven, but man, dying sucks. I think I want to live forever inside of a robot. Okay, Johnny 5. Oh, I'm sorry, Johnny 6. Johnny 6, Johnny 7. Johnny the robot don't believe in heaven. But that's what they've got. Everything is about the here and now. And what a terrible obsession with death. One of the ironies about this is that they talk about, so many of these folks talk about the Christian religion being a kind of death cult, that a lot of these religions are fueled by the fear of death. That's their narrative structure. It's a gobbledygook narrative, kind of like the gobbledygook narrative they have regarding the advance of secularism. People should really read Charles Taylor on that. And if they would like a smaller book, they could read James K.A. Smith, How Not to Be Secular. Or if they'd like it even better, they can, not better, different, okay? They can go and they can check out my series where I break it down much like I'm doing with this, and I broke down that particular book. You can find that in the description below. But the idea is they complain that it is a death cult, that you're afraid of death. It's the fear of death that drives you. And you look and go, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the idea for the Christian, on the one hand, is supposedly we're terrified of death. On the other hand, we're this death cult that wants to die. They can't have their cake and eat it too on this, by the way. They got to pick their poison. And if they want to talk about the fear of death, you want to talk about crazy fear of death. The people who believe that they open their eyes to this marvelous place, this wonderful place, this crazy thing where you've got this wild tension between things that are tragic and things that are glorious, things that are hard and things that are easy, things that are bitter and things that are sweet, and that they live in that world and they have found that, in fact, they love a great amount of it. They love it more than they hate it because they don't off themselves. They'd rather live. They'd rather suffer and deal with this. They prefer what they choose what they prefer, and they prefer to live. They don't want to die. But yet the clock is constantly ticking. So they've got their own, chalice. They've got their own fountain of youth that they're running after. And they're trying to figure it out all over and over and over. and putting all of their hopes in that, because otherwise they're dead and they're gone and nobody will even remember them. They open their eyes to a world that they can't even explain how it got here. Statistical probability, I think. I think just based on the statistics, it should have come out of nothing. Give me a break. They can't explain how it's held together. They can't explain the meaning of anything with this stuff. They don't even like to question why. But yet they love it. They love learning about it. Their fanaticism with scientism seems to be that they really want to know something. Almost like they're compelled to try to find truth in some way, meaning and purpose in some way, and that they can't satisfy themselves with mystery. No way. They can't satisfy themselves with the divine. No, no, no. That's not somebody who wants to die. That's somebody who wants to live. And that fear of death that they have, that fear of the abyss that they have, is why they can't tolerate anything negative around them. It's the advent of the outrage mob. It's the advent and the triumph, in fact, of the deconstructionist impulses that people have regarding cancel culture, deplatforming, depersoning people. It's the reason and the drive for radical conformitarian stuff. To say, we need on the one hand, this crazy tension between everybody's themselves, bro. We got to be ourselves and diverse. And on the other hand, that they have to say that you got to be like us. You have to at least accept these most ruling assumptions about the world or you're out of here. It's a wicked bad thing. And the idea that you're going to just let it go, the idea you opened up your eyes to a world that you didn't expect. You did not ask to be born. You did not ask to see and feel the things that you saw and the things that you felt. You did not ask for that. You did not ask for taste buds that made you really, really like chocolate and Skittles. You did not ask for nerve endings that made you enjoy physical sensations, but you do. Or the feeling you get when you're petting a puppy. Or even better, when you're petting a cat. You didn't ask for it. And one day you're going to close your eyes and you know what? People will not remember you. Your memory will fade away completely. And ultimately, at the end of the day, for them, there's no eschatological thing other than cataclysm. Eventually, we are going to die. We could die at any second. Nothing's holding it together. There's nothing holding together. No providence that's ensuring that we're not going to blow ourselves up by a nuclear bomb or that we're not going to get struck by some kind of a meteorite and that it's going to annihilate all the earth and then we're going to be totally hosed. Or that everything over time is going to get wider and wider and spread out further and further and we're going to end up in this crazy world where we don't know jack. It's cataclysmic, apocalyptic. It's like scare porn. Watch their shows on it sometime. Turn on the TV and watch the way that they talk about possible ways that everything will end, right now. And then they're going to disappear. Whether in a big blast or a whimper. Whether in a gargly breath in their room alone with no kids or grandkids because they contracepted them to death. Or whether it's in some kind of a blast or a bomb, some kind of crazy thing, they'll close their eyes and breathe their last. And their name will fade away forever. And in their view, in their mind, everything that they were is gone. In fact, it will only remain for a small little time in any kind of significance at all. And they can pride themselves all day long that they're going to be worm food. But do not believe them. The consequences of this resolve are hidden from those who make it, for they involve the very reality to which realism is blind, the reality both above and below the narrow realist universe. We shall see how the closing off of heaven looses unexpected forces from below that make a nightmare of the nihilist dream of a new earth and how the new man of realism will resemble less the mythological, fully developed, perfect humanity than a veritable subhumanity, such as has never before been encountered in human experience. We must now explore the next step in the progress of the nihilism that leads to these ends: vitalism. All right. I'm grateful that you were along for the ride. I hope you had a fun time. Make sure, of course, check out PaleocratDiaries.com. We're going to do more over there. As I said at the beginning of the show, we're going to be doing a lot more. We're going to be talking about apologetics, about catechesis. We're going to be talking about all the things we talk about here and providing a lot of material on how to deal with monocle man, how to deal with certain arguments, how to make the case for your faith, and why you should be more convinced than ever before of the truth and certainty of the gospel. Okay? That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about leaving you up to the whims and fancies of the world. The world's wicked bad right now. It's tossed all around. You're better than that, though. Why? Because you are created in the image of God. And God gave you a purpose and design. You're beautifully and wonderfully made. And it's our hope here that you can better understand that. That we invite you into that dialogue and that encounter with our Lord. The one that we take a knee to all the time because he's King triumphant right now. Into all eternity. King triumphant right now. And we prove this with the use of the impossibility of the contrary. That without him, all of those things that we put our trust in, all those chariots and horsemen of the mind, whether it comes to science, evidence, uniformity, whether it comes to induction, whether it comes to being, how we know what we know, why are we to do what we're supposed to do, the one and the many, the common good, all these things turn to dust without God. You need that hypothesis, by the way. And let me just tell you one more thing about it. It's more than a hypothesis. It's God. And he's triune. And he has a church. And it's called Catholic. You've been watching Paleocrat Diaries. Until next time, never give up, keep on smiling, and memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.